What's going on, my boys? It's Nick coming at you with a brand new Egyptian God Numeron deck profile for the post-February 2022 ban list. If you guys thought that this list was absolutely crazy, this deck profile is going to be even crazier because I've been hard at work putting in the complete spice in this deck. Egyptian God Numeron is very, very fun to play. It's also pretty competitive, I would say. It just OTKs like nothing. Literally wants to just blind second most of the time. And it can make some really formidable boards as well. And the best part about it is that a lot of the cards that are going to be featured in this deck have recently been reprinted. So if you want to get these cards in the lowest rarity, the deck's super budget and you can probably do everything for about $100. So with that being said, if you're watching this right now, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. If you're not already subscribed to the channel, feel free to like the video and comment below what your favorite Egyptian god is. And yeah, let's go ahead and jump right into this profile because I'm really, really excited to show you guys what I've been working on here. So Egyptian God Numeron is something that I have featured on the channel before. However, I don't think it's been done like this. So we're going to start off with the Egyptian gods that we run. We are on 2 copies of Slifer the Sky Dragon and actually 1 copy of the Winged Dragon of Ra. Now, Slifer, in my opinion, is still probably the best out of the 3 gods because he's actually the only one that does something during the opponent's turn and in the way that he acts like a floodgate. Any monster that your opponent normal or special summons in attack position instantly loses 2,000 attack, and if the attack was reduced to 0, as a result, it immediately gets destroyed. That is not once per turn, so it's a pretty interesting floodgate for the opponent to try and navigate through. Not to mention that Slifer gains 1,000 attack and defense for each card in your hand, so he ends up becoming somewhat problematic to deal with. Now, we cut it down to 2 from 3 previously because of consistency issues. One of the issues that I felt the deck had in the earlier versions was just bricking too much on some of the god cards since they're so high level. So I felt that fixing the ratio a bit and cutting Slifer down to 2 was the right choice. Now, if you notice, we're also running 1 copy of the Winged Dragon of Ra. Previously, we would side deck this. However, after some deep thought and doing some testing, I found that the Winged Dragon of Ra actually isn't that terrible, and I would almost argue that it's better than Obelisk, despite Obelisk just being a solid 4K beat stick that can't be targeted. Winged Dragon of Ra does have some interesting applications with some stuff that we've added to the deck, and we'll jump into how relevant that is as we proceed through the profile. But this is what we're playing though. 2 Slifer, 1 Ra, I think is the perfect ratio. And not only that, Ra is also pretty good at also assisting with the OTK, given that if you have an open board, you can just summon Ra, pay life until you just have 100 left, and then Ra ends up having like an insane amount of attack value, and you can just beat over anything or beat through anything. So that's our ratio for the god cards that we play in the main deck. Now we move into our Numeron package. We're on triple copies of Numeron Wall. You need to see Numeron Network as fast and as quickly as possible. Numeron Wall gets you there. It just, as a quick effect, if you control no cards, you can send this card from your hand or field to grave to activate a Numeron Network directly from your hand or deck. That interaction cannot be stopped by Ash because you're not adding anything to your hand. You're just simply activating Network straight out of your deck, which is awesome. Not only that, Numeron Wall can protect you from being OTK'd, where if you took any battle damage, you can special summon this card, and then if you do, you end the battle phase after the damage step. So it's almost like a battle fader kind of, which is pretty crazy. So triple copies of Numeron Wall, just being able to search out your network to get your play started is nice. Then, since we want a blind second usually, we main deck triple copies of Lava Golem. I think a lot of people have been sleeping on this card. Lava Golem is just nuts. It's literally a kaiju for 2. You distribute over any 2 problematic monsters your opponent has. Yeah, you can't normal summon or set monsters the turn you activate the effect, but honestly, we don't really care about that most of the time. If we're going to Golem, that just gives us, or enables us to activate our Numeron Network, and we just OTK through the Golem, which is super, super cool. So 2 Golem. I think the card is really slept on, and I think some people are starting to catch on to it though, because I've seen some profiles that are starting to feature it more. But Golem just can't be underestimated. But moving into some of the new stuff we're deciding to run, we're actually on 2 copies of Vijam the Cubic Seed in our main deck. This is a card in a spicy tech choice that I've been messing around with. This card is actually pretty damn cool. It's a Dark Fiend, level 1, just like Numeron Wall. However, this card cannot be destroyed by battle, which in a simplified game state kind of makes it really annoying. And now that skill drain's at 3, you know, we can actually stall with this card because the not being able to be disrupted at battle is not an activated effect. So if our opponent tries to floodgate us with like skill drain and whatnot, we can just sit on the Vijam and not have to worry about, you know, immediately getting killed, you know, by some shenanigans. So Vijam's pretty cool that he has that ability. Not only that though, this card is nice because if this card battles an opponent's monster, which means if the opponent attacks into the Vijam or if the Vijam attacks into the opponent, you can place this face-up card in your spell trap zone as a continuous spell, and if you do, you place a cubic counter on that opponent's monster. Monsters with a cubic counter cannot attack. Also, their effects are negated. That is a permanent negation. Like, as long as they have a cubic counter, they permanently cannot attack or activate their effect, or their effects are negated. As long as they remain on field. That's a really awesome effect. And to make things even better, while this card is in the treated as a continuous spell card, by this effect, during your main phase, you can special summon this card from your spell trap zone. So like, even if they attack the Vijam while it's set, it can't be killed by battle. In the damage step, you can activate the effect, putting it in the spell trap zone as a continuous spell, putting a cubic counter on that monster. Now that monster is negated permanently and can no longer attack. And then on your next main phase, you just respecial the Vijam. Like, it's really annoying to deal with, and a really cool tech choice I've been testing in this deck, and it works out quite well. Because sometimes you might not open like the cards you need to see if you don't have access to Networker, or like you're trying to deal with like floodgates, for example. And Vijam is just a great card you can just sit on. But also new to the deck, we're running 2 copies of Guardian Slime. Guardian Slime came out in the Legendary Duelist set. And it's a pretty cool card, actually. It's a level 10 water attribute aqua type. If we take battle or effect damage, we can special the card from our hand, which is pretty nice. And then during damage calc, if this card battles an opponent's monster, as a quick effect, you can make this card gain defense equal to that opponent's monster's attack during that damage calc only. So pretty much, if the opponent battles into this while it's in defense, his defense can become the attack of the attacking monster, which means that it can't be killed by that battle. You can only use that effect once per turn, and then if this card is sent from the hand or field to the graveyard, you can add a spell or trap from the deck to your hand that specifically lists the card, the Winged Dragon of Ra, in its text. And we'll get to the target we play for that later, but 2 copies of Guardian Slime is really cool, I think. And, you know, like if you take damage similar to Numeron Wall, it can just special itself and like block an attack and keep you alive. Because sometimes all you need is just that extra turn to be able to flip things around in OTK. So moving on, we play 1 copy of Gizmek Okami, the dreaded Deluge Dragon. This is a really spicy tech that we started playing. It's a water attribute level 10 machine monster. Attack 2950, defense 2950. It can special summon itself from the hand if there are 2 or more monsters on the field that were special summoned from the extra deck. That is a very easy requirement to fulfill, because, I mean, you can not only trigger that yourself with your Numeron plays, but if, let's say you go second and your opponent establishes their board, they're probably going to have at least 2 extra deck monsters on their field that were summoned from there. So this just becomes like a free special summon from your hand if you're going second, almost like Pankratops. And what's cool is that you can pay 1,500 life points to destroy all monsters on the field that were special summoned from the extra deck. And if you do, you can only attack with 1 monster this turn. So it's literally you pay 1,500 to wipe the board of all special summon monsters. That's a really strong effect. Either that's going to clear your opponent's board, or that's going to bait and negate. Regardless, you're dealing with, you know, something. And it's on a 2950 beat stick that just specials itself inherently like that is really cool. Also, if this card is in your possession is sent to your graveyard by an opponent's card, you can banish 1 monster from your opponent's grave, then gain life points equal to its attack. So this is also a pretty decent way to out stuff like DPE, which has been seeing a lot of play in this format. So I just think this card is really, really awesome. And you guys are going to see why we're running it, because this card has a really good hidden synergy with the deck. But moving on, for the last card of main deck, is going to be 1 copy of Dinowrestler Pankratops. Again, because we do want to just blind second, and Pank is just an insane card at going second, being able to special it and deal with like a threat of some sort, or even a floodgate like Skill Drain. Since this card does tribute for cost, it will resolve under Skill Drain, because at resolution it's not on board, so Skill Drain can't actually stop it, which is cool. But moving into your spells, we're on triple copies of Numeron Network. You guys already know. how this works, or at least you should know. During the main phase, you can send a Numeron normal spell card that meets the activation conditions from deck to grave. This card's effect becomes the effect of the spell that was dumped. So we dumped Numeron Calling, and if we control no monsters, we get to special summon up to 4 Numeron Gate Xyz monsters from the extra deck. And then while Network's on the field, those Numeron Xyzes do not have to detach material to activate their effects. So Numeron Network is just single-handedly one of the craziest field spells I've ever read, and really, really strong. We decided to run 2 Mound of the Bound Creator in this deck because it actually works out extremely well at protecting our level 10 or higher monsters from being targeted or destroyed by card effects. So it makes them really difficult to deal with. So stuff like Slifer and Ra, having like a Slifer on board that can't be targeted or be destroyed by effects makes it that much more difficult to out. In addition to that, if a level 10 or higher monster on the field destroys a monster by battle and sends it to the graveyard, the player who controlled the destroyed monster takes 1,000 damage. And then if this card on field is destroyed and sent to the graveyard, you get to add a divine monster from deck to hand. So it literally searches, your Slifer or your Ra if it's destroyed while it's on field. But what's cool is that since it just generically protects level 10 or higher monsters from targeting or destruction, it also protects your Guardian Slimes from being targeted or destroyed by effects. And it also protects your Gizmek Okami from being targeted or destroyed by effects, which is also really insane. So that's just some, added benefits that playing 2 copies of Mound of the Bound adds to the deck, which I thought was kind of spice. Moving on, we are on the 1 Mystic Mine. I know some people are going to roll their eyes at this, but, we play in a format where there's a ton of negates and high impact cards. This deck is not Mystic Mine Turbo, and I didn't want it to be, but sometimes you just play it as a one-of because it helps. There are times when you need this to just either stall to gain access to what you need, or you just need to bait some kind of negate, and that Mystic Mine will do that. So as a one-of, I think it's fine. I know some people have mixed feelings about it, but at 1, I think it's okay. Moving on, though, we're playing triple copies of Forbidden Chalice. I think Chalice is really, really strong in this format, even better than something like Valor. Because now that Artifact Scythe is still in the game, along with DPE, I feel like the Scythe lock is going to be something that's a bit more viable. Now, post, Banlist, and we still have stuff like the Barrier Statue, although the Samorg Link did get banned, so I don't think Tri Brigade or Lyralusk will be able to spam out the Barrier as easily, but you still have decks like Fluunderies, which will be getting new support coming out of Battle of Chaos. That deck can still run the Barrier Statue, and sometimes you just need a quick and easy way to deal with a card like that on your turn. Which is something Valor can't do, obviously. So Chalice is just great. It either baits in a gate or it just deals with something that you just, found annoying. We're on 2 copies of Calling. Obviously, this is the card that we dump off our network, and this is what facilitates our Numeron combo. So 2 copies of Calling, I think, is the proper ratio. 2 copies of Memories of Hope, because why wouldn't you want to draw 4 cards when you activate this? This is like a double pot of greed. It's just nuts. It lets you draw cards up to the number Xyz monsters you control with different names. So it's pretty cracked. Then we're on 2 copies of Soul Crossing. Basically what this card does, it's like a Monarch Stormforth, but for the Egyptian gods. It just lets you tribute monsters from either side of the field to then normal summon a divine monster. Which is basically going to be your Slifer or your Ra, but you can tribute monsters your opponent controls as well, which is just absolutely crazy. And since it's a quick play spell, that means you can also do this during their turn to disrupt them. So you can literally sack 3 of their monsters and then stick a Slifer. And now not only did they lose their entire field probably, but now they still got to play under a floodgate on their turn. So Soul Crossing is nice. It does have a small restriction, but honestly, the restriction isn't that terrible. It just prevents you from activating more than 1 card or effect per turn until the end of the next turn, but that's nothing really that bothers us. We're on double copies of MST. We've always been running this card, and we probably always will. It's just really nice 1-for-1 spell trap removal, and now that we have stuff like Skill Drain in the format, I think stuff like this becomes even more valuable. So 2 copies of MST is a must. 1 Terraforming, because obviously we need to gain access to our network. We want to gain access to our Mound of the Bound and Mystic Mine if we need it. But 1 Terraforming is more than enough. Now for the card that we can search off of our Guardian Slime if it gets sent to the graveyard. It's going to be 1 copy of Ancient Chant. This card is actually really strong. It lets you add a Winged Dragon of Ra from your deck or graveyard to your hand. So this just adds further consistency to the deck, as well as helps you deck thin a little bit. And if you do, you can tribute summon one monster during your main phase this turn, in addition to your normal summoner set. So it literally gives you like a double summon effect almost, which is pretty cool. And then also, you can banish this card from your graveyard. If you tribute summon the Winged Dragon of Ra this turn, its original attack and defense become the combined original attack and defense of the monsters tributed for its summon. So basically, if you banish Ancient Chant and then you Soul Crossing by tributing the opponent's 3 monsters, you can summon out Winged Dragon of Ra, but then the Winged Dragon of Ra gains attack equal to the combined amount of attack and defense that the opponent's monsters had that you tributed, which is just stupid strong. So that's really, really fun to do. We're also on the 1 copy of 1-for-1, because 1-for-1 lets us search our Numeron Wall, which we could instantly, use its quick effect to send it to grave to activate network, or we can also go 1-for-1 to summon Vijam, the cubic seed from deck, which is pretty cool. So I think 1-for-1 has some nice utility here. We're on the 1 Harpies Feather Duster in the main, because again, we want to go second, blow out that back row so we can just OTK. 1 Called By obviously is a must. Every deck moving forward should be playing the 1 Called By because it's so strong, being able to stop hand traps, deal with stuff like that has like a lot of graveyard reliance, like DPE or Eldritch, for example. It's just too strong to be overlooked. Moving on to the traps, though, this is some new spice that you should let you realize why we're running some of the cards we're choosing to run. And this is going to be Ice Barrier. This card just came out in the most recent Battles of Brothers of Legend. And it says when an attack is declared involving your opponent's monster, change the opponent's monster's attack to 0, negate its effects, and also it cannot change its battle position. That's a permanent attack reduction and negation as long as that monster's on field on a card that doesn't even target. Yes, it's battle reliant, but honestly, like, it's just insane. It's not even once per turn for that effect either. So if I have 2 copies, I can activate them both. So you can indefinitely make something 0 attack, negate its effects permanently, and prevent it from changing battle positions as well, which I just think is super nuts. But where this card gains even more insane value is a secondary effect. You can banish this card from your graveyard to send 1 level 5 or higher water monster from your deck to the grave. Then you can add 1 water monster from your graveyard to your hand. Also, until the end of your next turn after this effect resolves, you cannot special summon monsters except water monsters. This card is crazy because even if, let's say you set it and your opponent just deals with it and you don't get to use the first effect, you can still utilize the secondary effect of the card, which is still just as strong because we can dump Guardian Slime from our deck to grave and then instantly add it back to our hand. And then mind you, remember, it doesn't negate the effects of the card you add, so you can still special the Guardian Slime when you take damage. So like that's a really cool interaction. But you can also dump this card, the Gizmek, because it's a water. So you can dump the Gizmek and instantly add it to hand to set yourself up for next turn to be able to special it and clear the board if you have to. Not to mention that both of these cards are all level 10s, which means that Mound of the Bound creator can also protect them. So I thought that was some really crazy synergy and some stuff that's like, some big brain 5-head plays, but I've been testing it and it's worked out extremely well. So the 2 ice barriers is just awesome. Not only that, just being able to have like that negation like that doesn't target, you could potentially out stuff like Dragoon, assuming you baited its negate and whatnot. It's just really strong. But moving on, we're on the 1 Metaverse because again, we want to see our field spells like, Network or Mound of the Bound. 1 copy of Jar of Avarice, which is another spicy tech that we run. Being able to recycle our Numeron package, we can shuffle back, 4 of our Numeron Exceeses and then the copy of Calling, and that effectively lets us reuse the network play a 3rd time in a duel, assuming the duel goes that long, because we do play 2 sets of the Numerons. So 1 Jar of Avarice, and then for the last card in the main is the 1 Red Reboot, because again, we want to go second. We don't want to have any pesky trap cards stop us from OTKing. So Red Reboot is there for that purpose. But that's it for the main deck, guys. Let's jump into the extra deck where we play the 1 copy of Egyptian God Slime. This card is really, really strong. It's also a water attribute, level 10, and an aqua. And we don't really fusion into it. We actually just special summon it by attributing our copy of Guardian Slime because it can do that by its own effect. Mind you, Mound of the Bound can protect this because it's also a level 10. But when let's say you search Guardian Slime off of your ice barrier, you're locked into waters, but that's not a problem because Guardian Slime is still a water, and then so is the Egyptian God Slime. So you can still make the God Slime even if you're locked under the restriction of ice barrier, which is pretty cool. The Egyptian God Slime, though, he cannot be destroyed by battle, He can also be treated as 1 or 3 tributes for the tribute summon of a monster. So you can literally use this as the entire requirement alone to summon out Slifer or Winged Dragon of Ra, which is pretty cool. On a 3k body, which is just nuts. Like I said, he can't be destroyed by battle either. And then your opponent cannot target for attacks. And your opponent cannot target with card effects any monsters you control except Egyptian God Slime. But what's cool though is that if you have God Slime and Mound of the Bound, the opponent cannot target the God Slime anyway. So it basically gives your whole board like a targeting lock where the opponent just cannot target anything on your field, which is pretty crazy. So 1 copy of God Slime is really, really strong. Then we move on to the Numeron package. Obviously we play 1 through 4, but we do run 2 copies of each, because sometimes you need to Numeron them again if you're not able to OTK them the first time, and it's just nice to have at least 2 sets of the cards. And then we do play the 1 copy of number C1 Numeron Chaos Gate Sunya, which we can just overlay on top of our number 1 here, and when he is summoned, he just banishes all monsters on the field, and he can come back and actually burn the opponent for up to 3,000 points of damage if Numeron Network is still on board when that happens, which is pretty crazy. But the Numerons just facilitate a crazy strong OTK. Basically, they all share this exact same effect. None of them can be destroyed by battle. And at the end of the damage step, if they battled an opponent's monster, you can detach a material from them, which again, you do not have to do if Network's on field. And it doubles the attack of all Numerons. So they start off at 1,000 apiece, but then they jump to 2k, and then 2k gets doubled to 4k, and then 4k gets doubled to 8k. So you can pump out so much damage in a single battle phase. It literally just is super, super strong. So obviously, I think it's pretty good. You know, the way Yu-Gi-Oh is nowadays, you either OTK or you get OTK'd. So, you know, if we can do it first, all the more power to us. But moving on to some of the links we play in the deck, we're on 1 copy of Knightmare Phoenix, just as a generic link too, to out, back row and whatnot. 1 copy of the Infinitrack Fortress Megaclops, again, because we can make this pretty easily off of our Numerons, and it's a pretty difficult boss monster to out, being that it's unaffected by all monsters except Xyzes, and can't be destroyed by battle except by an Xyz on a 4,000 beater, which is really nice. 1 copy of Saryuja, just in case we need to dig a little bit deeper into our deck, or shuffle back bricks or whatnot, fix our hand a bit. Well, again, we can make this off of our Numeron package. After summoning the Numerons, we can just link all of them off into Saryuja. Also, he does have the added benefit of being able to special summon monsters from our hand. So you can use Saryuja to get stuff out like Guardian Slime, Vijam, or even the Gizmek monster that we play in the main deck, which is pretty cool. We're on 1 copy of Crusadia Mekk-Knight Avermax. Again, just another really crazy strong link 4 we can make through our Numerons. That's a very annoying card to deal with. A lot of decks tend to struggle, especially stuff like Striker, since he can't be targeted. And then for the last link we play in the extra deck is 1 copy of Underworld Goddess of the Closed World, being a crazy Link 5 monster that we can again make through our Numerons, as well as using one of our opponent's monsters as link material for this. And she just has a really strong effect where she just blanket negates all monsters on the field and prevents the opponent from special summoning stuff out the graveyard, which is crazy too. So that's it for the extra deck. Let's jump into the side deck real quick before we wrap things up here so you guys can get an idea of what we run. In the side, we're on triple copies of Sphere Mode. This card is, again, just really strong for going second and outing, like, crazy boards. Like, if Lava Golem isn't enough, then Sphere Mode will take care of it. Also, Sphere Mode is pretty cool to be able to play around the Barrier Statue as well, because you don't special summon this. You tribute to normal summon, so Barrier Statue doesn't prevent that from happening, which is nice. Also, it is a level 10, so Mound of the Bound protects it, and it's a Divine Beast type, so you can search this off of your Mound of the Bound creator if it gets destroyed, which is just nuts. And then also this card gives you access to the Winged Dragon of Ra, which we do main deck now. We side deck a 3rd copy of Vijam, just in case our opponent decides to be sneaky and let us go first, or if we choose to go first to throw our opponent off their game, since they think that we're on a OTK deck, they wouldn't expect us to side in cards for going first. Well, we can side in the 3rd Vijam and, go first, set like a bunch of back row, set Vijam pass, and it works out pretty good. We do play the 1 Gamma Seal in the side because it's actually searchable off of our Ice Barrier card that we play in the main deck, because Ice Barrier can foolish a level 5 or higher water monster, and then you get to add that card from the graveyard to your hand. So, if we need the Gamma Seal, we can side it in, and it's searchable through our Ice Barrier trap that we run. So it's just a Kaiju, it's a water, really good. We also side deck 1 copy of Zaphion the Time Lord. This, again, is another 5-hit spicy tech choice that we decided to play. Time Lords are pretty funny. They can be normal summoned without tributing, if we control no monsters. They cannot be destroyed by battle or card effects. We take no battle damage from attacks involving the card. And then at the end of the battle phase, if this card battled, we shuffle all spells and traps the opponent controls back into their deck. So this is just like, Giant Trunade, basically, that's legal. On a level 10 that can't be killed by battle or card effects, and we take no damage. Really funny card. But what makes it even better is the fact that the Time Lords happen to be level 10s, which means that if we have Mound of the Bound creator out, Mound of the Bound also protects the Zaphion from targeting as well, which is just silly, because now it can't be targeted, can't be destroyed by battle or card effects. But if you look, it's also a water attribute, which means it's another card that we can search off of Ice Barrier's secondary effect. So, like I said, there's a lot of hidden synergy here. And just having a card like this on our side means that if we go against a back row heavy matchup, we can side this in, normal summon it without tribute, attack, and literally just sweep their entire back row. It's just nuts. So the one Zaphion on the side I thought was really, really cool. But now we're getting to the real spice. We side deck 1 copy of Destiny Hero Plasma and triple copies of D-Force. Now this is another big brain 5-head play I'm testing with in the side. If we decide to go first, or we think our opponent might make us go first, we can side this in games 2 or 3, and we can effectively just shut our opponent down from playing Yu-Gi-Oh! Again, we play Numerons, so we can summon out, up to 3 monsters pretty easily through our Numeron Network, which means that gives us the fodder required to be able to tribute to special summon our Plasma to our field. But if we have D-Force as well, D-Force lets us search the Plasma from deck or graveyard to hand, but it also grants the Plasma additional effects. The opponent cannot target cards I control with card effects. That includes Plasma and the D-Force. And then it also prevents our back row from being targeted as well, which means they can't preemptively pop like our ice barriers and stuff like that. But what's cool is that each Destiny Hero Plasma we control gains 100 attack for each monster in the graveyards, cannot be destroyed by our opponent's card effects, and can make a second attack during each battle phase. So it prevents Plasma from being targeted, can't be destroyed, and it makes it gain attack as well and can attack twice. It's just nuts. Now, mind you, Plasma's already a huge floodgate monster. It's basically skill drain on legs, which is nuts. And it also has a relinquish-like effect where it can target a monster and equip it to itself, and then it gains half of the attack. So this is something that I was testing with, and it's shown very good results. Like I said, if we think that we want to go first, game 2 or 3, or we think our opponent might force us to go first, they will instantly regret it when we go ahead and Numeron, and then summon Plasma as our 4th summon, by the way. So this is completely Nibiru proof as well, and just completely shut them out of the duel. So that's something that I've been testing with, and like I said, it has been really, really good. But moving on, we side deck 1 copy of Necro Valley. Again, we play a lot of cards that search field spells, so we thought that playing Necro Valley is nice, and Necro Valley is pretty strong, just putting a huge padlock on the opponent's graveyard. There's a lot of graveyard-reliant decks now this format, and shutting them from their graveyard is pretty cool. So Necro Valley is always cool in the side. Now again, since skill drain is at 3, we do have to place some form of spell trap removal on the side, so I decided to go with Heavy Storm Dusters. Also, even though Imperial Order was banned, Anti-Spell is also still at 3, which means that I could see people leaning towards playing that now, which means that Heavy Storm Duster is even better in this case because it's not a spell card, it's a trap, so we can still play our game. So triple Heavy Storm Duster, and then for the last card in our side is actually going to be the 3rd copy of Ice Barrier. So again, if our opponent forces us to go first, they're going to have a bad time, basically. So either they let us go first and they get floodgated, or we go second and they get OTK'd. So they get to pick. But that's it for the profile, guys. Let me know what y'all think down in the comments below. Like, subscribe if you haven't already, and stay tuned for more amazing Yu-Gi-Oh content, deck profiles, deck discussions, and all that stuff. But again, thank you all so much for watching.